Welcome, Kaila Colbin, to Future Proof. This is our first
Thank
virtual interview.
It's exciting.
It absolutely is. Now, I was very excited to have you on Future Proof because you are probably a bit of a catalyst for me being so ingrained now in what's happening around the future and doing a lot of talking in this space and also trying to create as much awareness, a bit like you, around how we can help people prepare for the future. So let's introduce you in the context of an amazing woman who wears many hats. One for which I know you most famously for, and I think a lot of people in Australia and New Zealand, is bringing Singularity out to New Zealand and then to Australia for the first time this year. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about how you would describe yourself as a human being?
Oh, as a human being, that's a much broader question than I was prepared for. I would describe myself as a human being relentlessly curious. And so when the opportunity comes along to become more involved with an organization like TED, or to become more involved with an organization like the Climate Reality Project, or to become more involved with a conversation with an organization like Singularity University, I just jump on that opportunity because I can't wait to find out more about it and learn more and grow as a person from it. So yeah, that'd be my summary of myself.
And just picking up on that, which I think is really interesting. I mean, one of, I think, the key insights for me over the last 12 months is that curiosity is probably the number one skill to start to unpack the future. And it's something as adults, many of us have lost the innate ability to do because we get so caught up in the busy. And it's equally what I think, I'm assuming here has led you into the, amazing work that you're now doing, curiosity.
Yeah, I feel like there are so many number one skills. Like curiosity, absolutely. Leadership, absolutely. Then within leadership, there are so many number one bits for me anyway. When I think about what kind of skills and capabilities do we need in order to face the future, there are so many that come to mind. I go, this one's super important, but so is this one, but so is this one. So I think we really do need to be kind of broadly skilled humans. To the extent that we can be, we'll be better adapted to the future that we're moving into. So curiosity, absolutely a huge one, and kind of coupled, it sits alongside curiosity, but this appreciation that almost more like the growth mindset conversation versus the fixed mindset, right? So alongside curiosity sits the appreciation that things are always changing, that there's always something new to learn and new to discover, and that's not there's no sort of real life that we'll get back to once things settle, that this is actually real life, this kind of continuous changing evolution and disruption.
I like that. I absolutely love that. So tell me a little bit then about what's got you excited about the future in the context of what you're seeing.
Look, there's so many things to be excited about. So one of the things that we're seeing is that the nature of exponentially progressing technology means that opportunities are opening up that are kind of unlike anything we've seen in human history. So just by way of a small example, last month, an artificially intelligent facial recognition system was used to help identify 3,000 missing children in India in the space of 4 days. So 4 days, they're able to identify 3,000 missing kids, reunite them with their families. This is certainly something the U.S. Border Patrol could be looking at, this kind of technology right now. But that is the kind of the use of these technologies towards this just incredibly good purpose. These technologies mean that people anywhere with limited resources have access to the kind of resources that only huge organizations or research institutions had access to, 10 or 20 years ago. So you can have a kid in Romania, as actually happened, a kid in Romania connect with a guy in Melbourne, decide he wants to build a rocket, learn how to build his rocket and get parts for his rocket off eBay, come to Australia, partner up with Steve Sammartino from Melbourne to build a full-size car made out of Lego that runs on air. And when they wanted to figure out how they were going to build the engine for the car, they went on YouTube and found someone who had built a smaller engine that runs on air, and they scaled it up. So this kid, again, he was a teenager from Romania. He 10, 20 years ago, he never would have been able to follow this kind of dream. And now he can, because these technologies make it possible. So that's the fact that I can sitting behind my desk in New Zealand, I can access, education from MIT and from Stanford and from the world leaders in artificial intelligence and autonomous vehicles, and I can learn how to do these things. It's absolutely miraculous that we live in this time, and I feel so lucky to be a part of it.
So then let's flip the conversation and talk about what's got you concerned about the future, because obviously with every amazing technology we have, there's pros and cons.
Yeah, absolutely. So F. Scott Fitzgerald said that the mark of a first-rate mind is the ability to hold two opposing thoughts simultaneously and still retain the ability to function. There is a lot that keeps me up at night when it comes to the future that we're heading into. Just a few of them I can rattle off. So technological unemployment is obviously something that we talk about a lot. Will the robots take all the jobs? There's good reason to be concerned about this. It's a very complex and nuanced topic. It's the kind of thing you stay up until 2 a.m. talking about over whiskeys. Regardless of whether new jobs get created that replace the old, historically we have always seen that when that happens, those new jobs are often geographically diverse to the old jobs. So you have a barrier in terms of, it's not this person loses a job and then gains a new job. It's this person loses a job and this person gains a job over here. So overall, the picture looks like kind of everything is fine, but there's still significant upheaval.
Yeah.
That's one thing that I'm worried about. I'm aware that as of right now today, we are not seeing technological unemployment. We are seeing increased inequality as a direct result of automation. This has been happening since the mid-70s, when for the first time in human history, we were able to decouple productivity growth from wage growth. And what that creates is a situation where at the sort of high level politician level, you can say everything is great, GDP is on the rise and unemployment is low, but on the ground for significant chunks of the population, things are not. That's not their lived reality. The lived reality is not that everything is great. The lived reality is actually, I'm not better off than my parents, and I'm possibly worse off than my parents, and I don't know where I'm gonna how I'm gonna pay the bills next month, and I feel like that kind of disconnect between the high level narrative and the lived reality for people is what gives rise to a lot of the kind of political movements that we're seeing emerge, these sort of nationalist, like, system is not working for me movements. That's the second thing that I'm worried about. I get super worried about cybersecurity, about the fact that when everything is connected, everything is vulnerable. And there are, infinite examples of how we're doing a terrible job of securing our connectivity. And as we get more and more deeply embedded into the Internet of Things, and we move to billions and trillions of connected devices rather than millions, then that challenge only gets worse. We connect everything now. We connect our light bulbs, we connect our fridges, we connect our IV machines in hospitals. Most of those gadgets are created by people who don't have a profound understanding of online security. Last month, a casino in Las Vegas was hacked, and a high roller database was stolen, and the hackers got in through a connected fish tank in the lobby. So cybersecurity, huge thing that keeps me up at night. And then the final thing that I'll just touch on is the undermining of trust that we have, again, as a direct result of these technologies. So not only undermining of trust being driven by sort of filter bubbles created in our social media platforms, but also the undermining of trust as our technologies become good enough to generate authentic looking video and audio of anyone doing or saying anything. Our ability to have a shared set of facts on which to base a conversation becomes ever diminished, and that's something that is it's very insidious and hugely damaging to civil society as we know it. So, yep, lots of things that keep me up at night.
I don't know whether you've seen it. I read a report last week that came out of, is it the Foundation for Young Australians? Jan Owen's got some amazing work that she does. And they researched over 14,000 young Australians under the age of 25, and they said 50% of them are unable to find full-time employment. And most of them are educated. And so to your point around the unemployment, I think it's a very interesting space.
So then we get forced into the gig economy, which is not necessarily all that beneficial. Like in some ways, the gig economy is great, right? Somebody is a stay-at-home mom and has a couple hours in the afternoon and can go and do something that otherwise that person would never have access to. But in some ways, it's a terrible alternative to the kind of security and confidence that you get from full-time employment. And we can't force people and organizations into organizational structures that simply don't work anymore. But we also should delude ourselves that the gig economy is this wonderful thing for the people who are participating, when actually a lot of what we've done is just shift the burden of social well-being away from the organizations and towards the individuals.
Yeah, and I read recently a lot of the people in the gig economy, as you say, they're women. And then what I think is interesting about this, like you say, the flexibility is compromised then for things like superannuation, paid leave, all of those things. And when you've already got an equality gap for, in gender, what are the long-term impacts of having mass migration of women across the gig economy?
Absolutely. And the thing is that, the main organizations driving a gig economy, they know that, those things are expensive to offer. That's why they fight so hard to make sure that their people are classed as, partner drivers and not employees. But, the truth is that if you are sort of full-time or significant amount of your time generating a significant stream of your revenue from an organization, then they should hold some responsibility. And because we can't force organizations to adopt models that are no longer working, we should also look at adapting our regulatory environment to the new realities. So maybe instead of saying, well, if you're a full-time employee, your employer has to provide you benefits, maybe it's actually you get benefits with every hour you work, and it's just a percentage of your pay and it goes towards this fund or whatever. And if you work 2 hours with me, you're going to get those benefits. And if it doesn't matter if you're a partner driver or if you're an employee, you're going to get those benefits regardless, because every single hour you worked is going to go towards your thing, and it gets calculated that way. So it becomes much more portable and less dependent on you having to fit this definition of employee that we've had in the past.
I like that. So I'm going to ask you a random question because of the conversation we've just had. In the context of everything we've spoken about, if you could change anything tomorrow that you think would help us for the future, what do you think you would change?
I would annihilate the myth that the sole purpose of the corporation is to generate returns to shareholders. It's not true. There's no, it was, that idea was put forward by Milton Friedman in 1970 in a New York Times article. There's no legal requirement for that to be the case. We have incorporated it, we've integrated it so much into our common understanding of what a corporation exists to do that we forget to even question that assumption. But it's not a fact, and there's no legal basis for it. And it's actually the source of many, many activities and behaviors that have been a profound detriment to our society. I cannot understand why we have a distinction between companies that do good, like social enterprises, and sort of real companies over here. I cannot understand why, if corporations are persons under the law, they don't have the same not only legal, but also moral and civic responsibility that we all have. We all have the responsibility, if there is a snowstorm, to help shovel the walk of our 80-year-old neighbor. We have the responsibility to make sure that we're paying our taxes and not littering. And we all have these kind of civic and moral responsibilities. And if we're going to talk about corporations as persons, then they should have the exact same civil and moral responsibilities as the rest of us. So if I could change one thing, that would be it.
I love it. So in closing us out, do you want to provide us with some wisdom around a lot of the people that watch this series are looking for simple hacks or ways they can start to, I talk about future-proof, but I mean future-proof, you can't future-proof yourself, that it's like, what are some of the things that people can start to do to prepare for the future so that they don't get left behind, and they can remain relevant and try and keep their head above the water in the context of the speed of change that we're experiencing?
Yeah. So my simple hack is to immediately get comfortable with the idea that there is no simple hack. This stuff it's so vast, it's so profound. I spend a huge chunk of my working life trying to keep up with it, and it's quite a challenge. And so this acceptance that actually things are changing so fast that it is now everyone's job to spend time paying attention to this stuff. In terms of a simple hack, I would recommend, there's a wonderful newsletter by a guy named Azim Azhar, Azhar. The newsletter is called Exponential View. It comes out once a week. It is typically a collection of links about the kind of latest updates and happenings in the world of not only exponential technologies, but also, he includes a lot of links to essays on, philosophical implications or ethical implications or societal implications. He does a terrific, terrific job of curating this newsletter, and I would absolutely recommend every one of your viewers sign up for Azim's newsletter.
Oh, I will definitely be doing that. So thank you so much for your time today. I greatly appreciate it. What's next for you?
We're about to launch a new venture. So tomorrow I head to Europe for the global launch of BOMA, BOMA, which is a new organization. BOMA is a word that comes from Africa. It refers to the enclosure where the elders gather to share their wisdom, to make meaningful decisions and take meaningful action. Our BOMA is a global network of local organizers, all working in the space that we've been talking about. So the context of disruptive change, not just technological change, but also geopolitical change, social change, economic change, climate change, all of these vectors of change converging to create a future that is highly uncertain and ambiguous. The kind of specific what that we'll be doing is similar to the work that we've been doing in the past. So, large-scale events, executive programs, strategic development work, workshops, custom programs, et cetera. But all operating with this idea of how can we be more intentional and intelligent about the kind of future we're creating together.
Oh, I love that. And you're obviously, I've been doing a lot of research on Tristan Harris's movement at the moment, which I think is amazing. Can I just ask you one final question that I think is really interesting, is talking and creating, as you say, awareness, and all of us being, I suppose, cognizant of what is coming. How do you think we do that? Because in the work that I'm doing, I'm finding that I believe probably 70 to 80% of the population's got no idea of the speed or the scale of what's coming. What are you seeing in this space? Because I think we've got a real challenge just in awareness alone.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's, I've given 4 talks in the past 4 days. That's why we brought Singularity to New Zealand and to Australia. That's why we're launching this new venture, is because we have so much work to do to make sure that we're bringing people along on this journey. And so, finding that balance between not only awareness, but also then action, right? This idea that once you kind of get sheep dipped in the exponential Kool-Aid, then now what do we do? And so that's a big part of our work, is helping people understand how dramatic this moment in time is in terms of scale and pace of change, and then helping people work through what are they going to do about it, what happens next.
I'm going to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. Great to see you.